All right. Good morning to those of you on the East Coast. Good early morning to those of you on the West Coast. I'm your host, Brandon Troy, also co creator of Movers and Shakers Unlimited. Thanks so much for joining us here on the Saturday. As you know, each Saturday we try to make it a point to give you the goings on in entertainment with our show known as This Week in Pulp Culture. And of course, I'm not alone ever in talking about, these said topics that have happened over the past week. I know we've had a little bit of a hiatus, but a lot has happened in the last few weeks. So that we will, I'm sure get into in today's show. As always, want to welcome my co-host, Mr. Spillman Trueheart, aka Spills. What's going on, sir?
Well, hello, my friend. I'm so happy to see you. I'm doing so well. I have a Cajun accent. That's how I talk.
Oh boy, oh
Bon
boy, it's gonna be
temps,
much
bon
interesting.
temps.
Good to see you, man. As I said, as I was telling the folks out here, watching, whether you're watching right now live or after the fact, that we were on a little bit of a hiatus, and of course, a lot had been going on in those past 2 weeks. A little show called San Diego Comic Con was happening last weekend, so just a little small show. Perhaps people have heard of. So we didn't have a show last week. But we will, dive into it in terms of one of our stories this week. So without further ado, let's get into it. So the first one that I wanted to get into today deals, of course, with Deadpool and Wolverine. They had a major, box office haul, since being released last. I know officially it was released last Friday, but in terms of technical terms, we could say that they were released. It was released last Thursday, but per deadline, as of yesterday, this latest entry in the MCU, simply known as Deadpool and Wolverine, has accumulated $630.4 million worldwide. To be more specific, that is 298.4 domestic and 332 million international. Seeing the return of the Merc with the Mouth after 6 years and Wolverine after 7 years, of course, with Logan, the film acts as a multiverse story that pays tribute to the 20th Century Fox universe that came before, while also teasing the mega multiverse crossover that is to come, which we all, I'm sure, know as Secret Wars. So Spillman, your thoughts on the success of this most recent entry in the MCU. I know in terms of the last few installments, the MCU has really struggled in terms of what it has been able to accomplish box office wise. So this is a return to form, I guess you can say. So what are your
I
thoughts?
would
Is it
definitely agree. I would definitely agree. This is a return to form. I think that Deadpool versus and Wolverine was a great return to force. It was, in the style of Marvel movies. Some of the more recent ones have been trying to be a little bit more edgy, and try to get away from some of the motifs that Marvel comics are really known for. I feel like, Deadpool and Wolverine leaned into a lot of the things that they're known for. Also, while, like you said, paying homage to the 25 years of movies that we've watched with the X-Men Fox franchise. You know, I don't think that George W. Bush was president when they first started the X-Men movies, because it was 2000, but it was like May 2000. He wasn't elected till the fall. So, it's a
July
lot has
2000?
happened.
I will
Okay, I'm
never
sorry,
forget it.
July.
Yeah, I will
Yeah,
never
yeah,
forget
yeah.
it because of how big, 4th of July, how they had that in the marketing material. It was definitely July.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I'm just surprised to see how far they've come. Obviously I think the movie was good. I don't feel like, obviously these movies are formulaic. We can call a spade a spade. It's a genre movie. They're very genre. But as with most Deadpool products, there was a lot of fourth wall breaking that doesn't really happen in a lot of movies. So it was just good to see. It felt like a love letter to the fans, and you can't go wrong with that. Did you enjoy the movie? Did you see it at Comic Con, or where did you watch the movie?
So I did have an opportunity to see it while I was, away in for Comic Con. I saw it that Friday, and the reason being, I actually was going to wait a little longer to see it because I wanted to, you know, hone in just on the show in and of itself. But I'll be honest, like there was so much going on that week between, and we'll of course we'll get into this in the next story, but there was something that happened during the show that was connected to the movie, and because of that, I feel like there was a lot of like spoilers that were spilling out on the social media. So I was like, okay, I gotta just see this movie because otherwise, like, I'm gonna really be upset by the time I finally see the movie because nothing is gonna be a surprise to me because everything is gonna be spoiled for me. So um, the original plan was to see it like that Sunday of Comic Con, to kind of wrap up my Comic Con, but I ended up seeing it Friday night. Overall, I did have a good time. I thought it was a good film. I don't think it's a great film. I don't think it's the top tier of what we have in the MCU. And I know I'll probably get a lot of flack for saying that, but I'm just being honest. It's not middling fair either. It's good. If I were to grade it, I would give it a B. Like there were a lot of things that I liked. I loved a lot of the cameos that we got in that film. It's just that a lot of the humor, while a good deal of it was funny, some of it felt kind of forced. I don't know if you felt the same way. It didn't really hit, for me some of the jokes that were there. But in terms of what Deadpool, encompasses, in terms of just as you said, that fourth wall breaking and the type of relationship that you would picture that Wolverine, him and Wolverine would have, like that dynamic that they would have, that worked, a great deal. So, it's great to have, this film that allows us, as I said, to pay homage to what came before because I feel so oftentimes whenever we're dealing with um films that a lot of people that are very successful, and this is an example of that a lot of people tend to forget how we got there. They A lot of times people just think that, oh, okay, this is the the hallmark example of how the film should be, and it's like, no, like there were films that came before this that set the foundation and set the inspiration to where we got today, which is why a lot of times it's such a pet peeve of mine whenever I hear, and don't get me wrong, I love the first X-Men movie, I love the first Spider-Man movie, but it always irks me when, I always hear that, oh, Spider-Man and X-Men started the superhero revitalization of the superhero genre. I'm like, hold on, slow down. Like Blade came out in 1998. It came out 2 full years before X-Men. So let's give credit where credit is due that Blade started it, not X-Men. Because if we're really, being getting down into like the nitty-gritty and specifics of like aesthetics and the style of X-Men, you could say that it got it from Blade 2 because when we're talking about X-Men and what the costumes were like then versus what we, were able to be rewarded with in this film, they didn't have, the accurate comic book costumes. We had leather costumes, so much so they made a joke about it within that first. Anyone, if you all remember that first X-Men film, that interaction,
The blue spandex
yeah,
joke,
between
yeah, the
Wolverine and
yellow spandex.
that that was a major thing of them, quote unquote, taking the material seriously. The idea was to use leather costumes and versus like the spandex costumes because there was a concerted effort to try to make it as grounded as realistic as possible. So where we're talking about Blade also used leather. And so like
Hmm.
if we're talking about the source material with Blade, the original source material, because it has an aesthetic with like black exploitation and if memory serves, like the 70s, that original
Mm-hmm.
costume is kind of out there. It's like it's really kind of crazy looking. And so when they did that Blade film, and then they even have you guys could probably find an interview, a segment about that when Wesley is talking about the aesthetic that they wanted to go with in terms of like the world that they were trying to create and the type of costumes that the characters were wearing. They wanted to modernize it and update it. So nowadays, we have that updated version, and a large part of that I feel can be attributed to what we got in the movie. But like I said, it just always irks me when, yes, we have a successful film now, but let's not forget what came before that set that precedent, that set that foundation of what we have today. So, any further thoughts before we move on?
No, I was just also happy that the man finally put the mask on. The man finally put the mask on. To go to your point, like it's been 25 years we've been watching these movies. And like I was talking to somebody about it earlier this week. I was like, it'd be like if they had been making Batman movies this whole time and Batman had his face out, but then they were in the movie acting like they ain't know who Batman was. And it's like, wait a minute. Batman don't have no mask on. I can see this guy. It's Bruce Wayne. Y'all don't see it. It's the richest guy in town. He's right there with his mask on. Like he doesn't have a mask. So to see him,
The
to see
Superman
him,
thing always entertains me. Up,
hey, Paul,
Superman,
no, no,
right
I'll
there.
disagree with that. I'll
Superman,
disagree with
right
that. I'll
there.
disagree with that because I recently bought contact lenses at my new job. I have been wearing glasses for the first 3 months. I bought contact lenses like a few weeks ago. I've been wearing contact lenses into the office, and people like were looking at me, and they were like, "Can't place it, but something's different here." They didn't realize it. I was like, "Oh no, this is Clark Kent." You see, I Superman. Clark Kent, amazingly, it works that way because they were like, "Oh, you look so different. I don't recognize what I'm like, it's just because I don't have my glasses on." They're like, "Oh, wow." But no, that's not true. You can change your glass. You can take off glasses, and you would be a different person.
Sorry, bro.
Which is also silly because I much like Superman would stick out for the fact that I'm probably Superman. Because Superman, they say it's like 6'4", 225. It's
Yeah.
like, no, it's not that many guys walking around here that's that big, Superman. Just like me. It's like, hold on, Spillman. You're the only Spillman here. You're 6'8", 250. But yeah.
It's okay. It's cool. I'll let you shade the 2 inches because just by virtue of what normally happens when they always put everyone's height
Oh no, no, I'm
in
a
the roster.
legit 6'8", brother.
I'll let
Don't
you.
hate,
I'll
don't
let
hate,
you
ladies and
shade the
gentlemen.
two
You see
inches.
that?
It's
That's a
okay.
one guard hate, ladies and gentlemen. You see that? That's what happens when you be the one guard. You be like, you ain't that tall. You lying to media god. I know you lying to media god. That's unfortunate, Brandon. Don't do us. Don't do us like that.
But be that as it may, again, congrats to Deadpool and Wolverine and its success. More than likely, it will hit 1 billion because there isn't much else coming in the way of like releases that I feel like could dethrone it out of the, I guess you could say, the top three. Even if we may have a couple of films in there that may pop in there and take over the number one box office. I don't see it, falling out of the top
Ain't
three.
nobody not watching that. No,
I
it's gonna
mean,
be. I think
what
it's gonna
releases we have?
finish
I'm
the
trying
month.
to think. I think we have what's the M Night Shyamalan movie that's coming out
That ain't gonna dethrone it.
that came out this week. I know,
Yeah.
there has been some talk of that. I do believe Alien will do do some damage at the box office, but I don't think that it's going to be enough to take away
Yeah, I don't think
some
so.
money that Deadpool and Wolverine and another part of it that I feel is not getting enough credit in terms of its ability to continue to generate money is the fact that it has being released in other markets that typically American films wouldn't be released in. in the markets that we
It's
have
the film
here.
of the year to me. I think Deadpool and Wolverine is the film of the year. I went to the Alamo Draft House to see the movie. They had all kinds of
I'm
branded
curious,
stuff that
which
I've
one?
never
You go to
seen
the
them do
DC
that.
or the Crystal City?
Rhode Island, baby.
Okay, okay.
For the
Represent
streets.
Rhode Island. Okay,
for
I
the
see Rhode
city.
Island.
Yeah, but no, they had. I stole one of the menus. That this is coming home with me. I took one of the menus because the menus. I meant to bring it up here, but I didn't. But it's got the eyes cut out. It's Deadpool's face. It's hilarious. I'll bring it out next week. But
But
yeah, I think it's the movie of the summer. That's why they've been doing such good merchandising and stuff with it because they knew it was going to be a moneymaker and they also knew it was going to be a crowd pleaser. So I'm really pleased with it. It's the best to me. It's the best Marvel movie since Endgame, or is that Infinity War? Which one's the second one? Infinity War is the second one, or
no, it's
Endgame the
Endgame.
second one?
It's Endgame. Infinity
Endgame.
War is the
Since
first of
Endgame,
those two.
it's
Yeah.
been the best one since Endgame to me. Everything else has just been kind of like window dressing movies, but this one
I
actually
don't know.
had its
So,
own
like I
thing.
said, it's good to me, but like I still don't feel like it dethrones Endgame. It doesn't dethrone Infinity War. It
I didn't
doesn't.
say that. I said best since those
Okay, I'm about to
movies.
say it doesn't dethrone Civil War. Civil War is still up
Mm-mm.
there to me.
No, those are
Um,
all still up there. I agree with that. But like just to have Wolverine in the yellow suit
yeah,
with
I'll
the
give you that.
mask
Like I
on
said,
is just like 8-year-old me was like, "Oh my god!"
I know, right? Even some of the cameos, even some of the
Yeah,
cameos too. It was like that too. So I'll give you that.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, yeah. So switching gears, I wanted to get into the topic that I was, mentioning before, the reason for a lot of the hiatus, last week, and that's of course none other than San Diego Comic Con. That's a look at, the convention center, a sky view of the convention center. A lot of things went down over the course of the week in terms of, events that went down, in terms of announcements that were made. Um, I'll be a little biased in terms of some of the things that I feel stood out for me, but perhaps for those of you out there, you can drop and let me know in the comments whether you're watching us or watching it after the fact. What were some things that were highlights for you? But I guess for me, the some of the highlights that stood out for me was the Alien Romulus panel, in terms of the effort that was made in regards to just really getting the film out there, and the efforts that were made PR wise to be able to promote the film. I mean, they had instances where they had folks. I don't know if you saw it, Smillman. I'm sure it was going around social media where they were in downtown San Diego with face huggers on their faces, like they had stunt people with face huggers on their faces, and like chest bursts was coming out of them. They also had it happen during the actual panel. They gave us, which is why I wanted to also talk about it. They gave us face huggers to use as well, face hugger masks. They gave tickets, IMAX tickets for to be able to see Alien Romulus. So they're footing the bill, if you will, for me to check out Alien Romulus. And in terms of, I know we were just talking about Deadpool and Wolverine. Um, the MCU, Kevin Feige talking about what what the plan is going forward, because there so much has happened. The last time they were here, we have to remember what we had 2019, where we had some of those announcements of things that were on the way, and then just a few years ago, uh we had the announcement of things that were on the way in terms of like Blade and things of that nature, but we also had the announcements of the upcoming Avengers films, and a lot has transpired, in that time, since the announcement of having Secret Wars and having, King Dynasty. And so it was nice for them to kind of recalibrate what the expectations were, what was on the way, what was being being pushed back, things like that. So we did get a look at Fantastic Four. They debuted the Fantastic Car during the panel. which
Oh, there was a Fantastic car on the Deadpool movie as well. Did you notice that when they were like
you know
when they
what?
first drove up, they were driving a Fantastic car,
There was. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, they did have an Easter egg for that. But I'm saying in terms of what we have for the upcoming
the new one?
official
Yeah,
film, they did show that. They did debut it in Hall H. They showed a trailer that you can not sure at this point if you could find online, but they did show a trailer for Fantastic Four, which gave us like a quick tease of Galactus and just the aesthetic that we have with the Fantastic Four and kind of that 60s feel. Of course, unless you've been living under a rock, they also had the major announcement of Robert Downey Jr. returning as I love the cynicism. I love the cynicism.
that's
But
right.
yeah,
They
returning
said we
as
messed up with
Victor
6
Von
straight
Doom.
movies. We gonna go for the gusto.
And then even more so, the return of the Russo brothers too. If you recall, Spillman and I the weekend before Comic-Con, we had talked about them being in talks and how fitting it was that the news, conveniently came saying that they were in talks to be the directors of this film just in time for Comic-Con for them to officially announce that they were in fact hired as the directors, which unsurprisingly they were. So Spillman,
Unsurprising.
um, I know you weren't at Comic Con this year, but I'm sure in terms
Sadly,
of
this year,
going
no.
in terms of going on social media, there were some things that came across to you that came from the show. What were some things just as a someone on the outside looking in that was cool that you saw from the show?
Well, definitely the money news was cool. I was very cool with that. I was like, yeah, that's cool. I enjoyed a lot of the things that they've done. Actually, it's funny. We talked last year about how the Comic Con wasn't as like popping as it was. They didn't make as many announcements as they did. I think that's partially because they didn't know where they were going with this phase anymore.
Multiverse. Yeah.
With all the issues of really Jonathan Majors. I really think like it's amazing how much one person can mess up the whole show. But really, they had a lot of changes that have made changes to phase that when they announced the phase in 2019 to now, like they had the pandemic, the Black Panther, Chadwick Boseman passed away suddenly. Obviously the new main villain, Jonathan Majors had issues. So it's just good to see that Marvel get back on its feet. And Comic-Con is not just about Marvel stuff. There's a lot of other panels that we saw. We also saw our good friend and host here host a few panels. So we got to check in on those. So we're very lucky to be in this time and in this space, and I'm happy to see that the Comic-Con is living on because we were talking about last year because we had, I believe, it wasn't CES, but it was E3. It was the CES or E3 that canceled you last year that ended.
It was E3, like
Yeah,
indefinitely,
that's what I'm
indefinitely.
saying. E3 went the way of the dinosaur, and I was afraid that would happen with the Comic-Con in San Diego because, like, Disney will have their own thing. All these other studios have their own thing. So it's good to see that they're still coming to the worldwide leader, as they say, in this issue. So I think it's fine. I'm like, I really enjoyed it. And Robert, I know people are poo-pooing this idea of Robert Downey Jr. being the Doctor Doom, but I feel like they failed at casting Doctor Doom 3 times already. Like, obviously, they had that terrible Fantastic Four movie in the 90s that no one, I think it went direct to video. Then they had the 2 with Chris with in the early 2000s with Jessica Alba and all of them. Those were okay. Doctor Doom was kind of a weird guy.
Oh yeah, I think you're talking about the updated one with Miles Teller. Is that the one you're talking about? Because I know we also had a Miles Teller and Michael B. Jordan Fantastic
The
Four.
Michael B. Jordan one is the 3rd one. That's the 3rd time they miscast him because it's like Doctor Doom is
parting the actor's name that played Doom. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, but at any rate, they've miscast him 3 times. He's supposed to be the most diabolical villain, technically, in the whole verse. He's supposed to be like the Joker almost, or the Boogeyman. He's supposed to be able to shake up cosmic beings and do things that are far beyond that the skill set of a mortal man. So, um, for it to be someone who means so much to the universe, I think that may be a good thing. But it also is a grab for money to get the nerds out. They're like, hey, nerds, we've been hearing you complain about the fact that we got rid of all the people that y'all like in these movies. Because that's essentially what they did. You haven't really seen Chris Evans in a
And it's
movie.
Toby Kebbell, by the way. Toby Kebbell was the actor's
There you
name.
go.
Big
There
on
you go.
him.
But, sure. That guy, you don't close your eyes and think like you close your eyes, think of Iron Man, Robert Downey Jr. But you close your eyes, think of Doctor Doom, and it's a comic book panel. It's not a person that has ever played him. So for them to put Robert Downey Jr. in it and then try to use that to ease him back into being Iron Man, that's very comic booky. That's what comic books do. So, I'm okay with it. So yeah.
So I'll start first just with Comic Con in general, and then I'll get into the Fantastic Four of it all. First, just to talk about Comic Con in general. Comic Con is always a fun event. I look forward to it every year. Anyone who knows me, and the reason being is that it's something where there's just something about, which is why I also enjoy going to the movies as well. It's just something very fun about having that community component, that community atmosphere when it comes to enjoying a certain hobby or a certain fandom. There's nothing else much like it, which is like I said, why I enjoy the movie going experience versus while it's great to have the comfort of watching a film at home, it's still something that can't be replaced about going to a film on opening night or opening weekend and enjoying it in a community atmosphere and and taking part in that shared experience. So when it comes to Comic Con, is very much an example of that. If you're going to Hall H, if you're going to Ballroom 20, if you're on the exhibit hall floor, there are a lot of instances of that where you have that opportunity to kind of have that shared experience of enjoying a fandom that you share with other people. Another component of it too that keeps me coming back is it's almost like you also have that experience that you have of almost like going back to school. Whether it's if we're talking about grade school, if we're talking about high school, if we're talking about college, where there's some people that you only get to connect with when you are there for Comic Con. There are
Yeah.
friends that I have. Shout out to all of you guys. You know who you are. Where they are not, they're not stateside. They are in Australia, or they're in the UK, or they're in Japan. Like they're in all parts of the world, and the only time that they're able to come to the US is for Comic Con. So that in and of itself is something that keeps me coming back. And don't get me wrong, yeah, we're in a modern age where you have technology, and yes, we're all connected via social media, and that's all well and good, but that doesn't replace the ability to be able to hang out in person, even if it's just for a week.
Hey, you
So
got to touch the grass, baby. That's what we was talking about yesterday. You got to touch the grass. It's something
so
about being in actual connection for sure.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And so, in talking about the Fantastic Four part of it, um, talking about those other attempts and making, the films, looking back on it, it is unfortunate how they turned out, but in thinking of it in the perspective of making a movie, I don't feel that people ever had the intention of making a horrible movie or bad movie or a movie that doesn't work. That unfortunately is just the nature of making movies, where you have every intention of making it good and making it, a terrific film, and sometimes, things just don't fall into place, the way that you anticipate it will. And I feel like those are examples of what we have with the Tim Story Fantastic Four films. There are, redeeming qualities of it in terms of like the characterizations that we have. I still like, what Michael, Chiklis, did with the thing, and the costume that we have with that. It at that time, that was like when, looking back on it, I was like, oh wow, I like how they were able to do that practically. But sometimes when we're talking about some practical effects, sometimes they don't age very well. So unfortunately, I feel like that runs into an example of things that don't particularly age well when you look at it years down the line. But at that time, like, it was great at that time in terms of what we had with practical effects. Um, if we're talking about Doctor Doom, I'm still kind of mixed in terms of the decision being made with Robert Downey Jr. being Doctor Doom, and the only reason being is that I understand why they made that choice, just based on the circumstances that we had with Jonathan Majors, and because of the finite amount of time that they have between now and Secret Wars to be able to include Doctor Doom, it would be kind of weird to get a brand new actor, because you have to develop that relationship like we did with what is it, with Thanos, over years and years and years, and they don't have that luxury if they're trying to wrap up this multiverse story. So I understand the need to get a familiar face, so that way they don't really have to do that groundwork of years and years and years with a new actor. But I still feel like it can be problematic, because instead of expanding the story with the new face, you're now making the story smaller by having a face that we already have. It's kind of like the same way that I feel about Star Wars, where why I feel The Mandalorian works is that we finally have a story. Don't get me wrong, they pop up in the
It's not
story.
Skywalker heavy.
Not Skywalker. Exactly. Like, every story does not need to be Skywalker. Skywalkers are cool. Don't get me wrong. But like,
My
if
my
we're
four
talking
year old
about
would disagree with you. My
if
four
we're
year old would
talking about
disagree with you.
Star
He don't want
Wars,
to watch nothing else than the
if
Skywalker
we're
ones. He's like,
talking about Star Wars, to give you as an example, it is a galaxy. A galaxy is massive. It's not just one planet. It's not just one little section of a solar system. It is a galaxy. So it works better when we're expanding it among a galaxy with a slew of characters versus just a couple of characters again and again and again. There were actors that I thought could have worked as Doctor Doom. But again, I understand based on the
let's
circumstances
spitball
of
them.
the
Which ones
choices
would
here.
you instead of RDJ? Who would you rather have had?
So I know for a long time people were saying Cillian Murphy, who was a co-star of Robert Downey Jr. in Oppenheimer. He played
Uh
Oppenheimer. I thought he could be a terrific Doctor Doom because he's played great villains before. Another guy who, because what I'm thinking of when we're talking about Doctor Doom, it has to be someone who, if they're wearing a mask, you can still see them acting, and that's not an
yeah.
easy skill to be able to do. Like, not a lot of actors.
Skarsgård, your boy could do it.
Skarsgård, Skarsgård.
Yeah,
Oh,
your boy that played
Bill.
it. Yeah. No, he
Mm,
couldn't. But he
no,
got that kind of weird accent. He's got a foreign accent, so
he
maybe.
does. He does. Actually, you know what? You know what? I'll give you that. So Bill Skarsgård, he wasn't on my list, but and don't get me wrong, I love Bill Skarsgård is awesome. He just wasn't who I was immediately thinking of. But like I said, Cillian Murphy, another one that I feel like is a deep cut because he's been in other X-Men related stuff, but because it's so separate from the MCU that I don't think it would have affected things or confused people. Dan Stevens. Dan Stevens, I feel would have been a terrific Doctor Doom. If you guys are the name doesn't ring a bell, Dan Stevens played Legion, and he played Legion on the TV series. And
Okay,
he was
yeah, that would have worked.
Yeah, like he plays a lot of like zany, crazy characters, and he has like very when he's acting, his eyes are very expressive. So like as I said, you need to have someone who can act through the mask and still be able, they'll still be able to act not just with their eyes but with their voice. And so I feel like those actors would have been great choices, um, for that part. But again, we'll see. I could be proven wrong in terms of how they execute it, but I'm on the fence about what we have with Robert Downey. And don't get me wrong, Robert Downey is terrific. I just feel like it might be a mistake of having an actor who has had such an iconic role in another role to return back as a different character. Just me.
Yeah,
So,
it would be.
all right. So getting
And
into
also, we hope that when he is on screen, just like they did in the Iron Man movie where they were playing Ghostface Killer, that MF Doom gets some love in this Marvel movie. His family, he's no longer with us, but all the nerds love MF Doom. If you like Marvel Comics, you probably like MF Doom. So if Marvel messes that up, I will never forgive you, Marvel.
fair enough. Fair enough. All right. So we did have some local news. If you know that Spillman and I, we are in the nation's capital in that DC metropolitan VA area. And there was news that came about this past week from the DC Department of Transportation stating that the DC circulator would be phasing out by the end of 2024. Just to give, a little more, information on that. As I said, this was from the Department of Transportation. So if you guys aren't familiar with the circulator buses, I know, as I said, local story. It is a bus that provides a cheaper option for bus riders. It only costs $1 to be able to ride the circulator versus the $2 that you typically have to pay, as your regular fare on any other bus. Um, Furthermore, in terms of the story itself, the cancellation of this service is attributed to the ridership shrinkage that occurred during the COVID-19 pandemic. According to the Department of Transportation, in terms of their data, the circulator saw 5 million riders in the 2019 fiscal year, shrink down to just under 2 million in 2023. And because of this failure to return to pre-pandemic, levels, along with the steadily rising operating costs during the DC's budget deficit, it was enough, for Mayor Muriel Bowser to propose axing the circulator service. Spillman, I know you don't really catch the bus all that much, any of the public transportation all that much, but I'm sure you've had an opportunity to catch the circulator. What are your thoughts on this news of having an affordable means of public transportation in the DC metropolitan area being concluded by the end of this year, or being wrapped by the end of this year?
Well, I think it's a twofold thing. I think that the circulator is more geared towards tourists and the like. And I do know that traveling is down, and also in office work has changed. So you said they lost about 2 or 3 million riders per year.
Yeah.
Was
So
that about
just
how you?
under, yeah, a little over 3 million, because they were saying it's not even 2 million, it's just under 2 million.
Yeah,
By
so they went
2023.
from 5 to 2 to 1.9 is crazy. But you can't expect to keep a business open if you lose 3 million customers. We would like for this podcast to have 3 million customers, but believe if we lost 3 million customers, we would stop doing the podcast. So
Yeah.
we just, it's sad to say, but you can't make up those kind of losses. And then I think that with a lot of the issues with these businesses that are closing and ceasing in operations is the fact that, just like we're saying, the the ridership and the behavior patterns of the customer base have completely changed. It used to be that people were coming downtown 5 days a week, and no one comes down 5 times a week. No one does. No one does.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
we've talked about it a bit in terms of the other, the other instances, that we have, um, the other instances that we have with events that transpire in DC. I know we were talking about like uh, the our arena, our basketball arena, and how the the foot traffic there, has fluctuated, in terms of the options, that are there, and how frequently people go down there, and how some businesses are closing because there are fewer and fewer people heading down there by our basketball arena in Chinatown. But I mean, there are a couple of things to glean from this, and I guess the first one is it's unfortunate, especially in this day and age where things are way more expensive, things which people buy on a daily basis. If we're talking about everyday things, groceries, things of that nature, that
hmm
there is an inflation going on, and to have yet another thing that allows people to get around in an affordable way to be taken away is unfortunate. What's also unfortunate is that if we're talking about the circulator, which I don't think enough attention is being paid to, is that the circulator, while we do have a decent subway system, the circulator allows you to take routes that the subways are unable, or at least at in this current state right now, are not able to get to. If we're talking about
yeah,
Georgetown, it's one of the easiest ways to get to Georgetown, from downtown DC, from Capitol Hill, is by using a circulator, versus people who know DC having to catch the subway up to Foggy Bottom, and
and
then
hoofing it,
and then
or
somehow figuring
or
out a way
Dupont and
to get
hoofing
that
it.
way.
Yeah,
So,
I agree. I
and then
just
that's
it is
that's just
sad.
one example, one route that the circulator allows for easier transport from one area to another. I have another theory on that. We will talk offline about that said thing of the other
Oh,
conspiracy
we
theory,
know. Like, why ain't no train stop
but
over
I
there?
but because I have thoughts on that too. But yeah, as I said, it's unfortunate. The thing that's even crazier about that, they talk about the actual service wrapping up completely by the end of this year, by December 31st. But the other detail in that, for those that are looking at the fine print, if you will, it actually is going to end, or start phasing out a lot sooner than that. They're going to start phasing out some of those routes with that DuPont Circle and Roslyn route. That's actually going to wrap up,
Yeah,
phased out, starting on October 1st. So, yeah, everything will be done by the 31st, but start getting prepared for it
oh
starting to
yeah,
phase out a lot earlier than that. It's going to be a hard close by the end of this year, but by that time we won't have any routes at all. So, enjoy it while you can. Hopefully, we may get an update in this regard, that they find a way somehow to still be able to save the service, but at least as it stands right now, doesn't look like it's going to be something that is in the cards. So any last thoughts before we get into our final story today?
I will say that the circulator ride of my youth to Georgetown to buy clothes and sneakers and other things that I didn't need to spend my money on will be greatly missed, because the time spent in Georgetown was a formidable time and a formational time. So just sad to see it go. It's an institution. Even if we have our views of what kind of institution it was and what purpose it served, but just sad to see it go.
For sure, for sure. All right, so the next thing that I wanted to get into, it would have been the news regarding the USA basketball team. But one thing that I wanted to touch on before we got to that, involved Kobe Bryant. This was most recent news that happened as of yesterday. So, it's kind of a last minute add on, if you will. Wanted to put up the statue picture of the statue right now. But this was news that came out yesterday. The Los Angeles Lakers and the Bryant family installed a new permanent fixture outside of Crypto.com Arena, honoring the five-time NBA champion Kobe Bryant and his daughter Gianna Maria Honore Bryant. The statue is here, or has been, placed there to celebrate Kobe's love for his daughters. It recognizes his unwavering pride, this being Kobe Bryant and being a girl dad, and the Bryant family's support for women and girls in sports. The tribute represents Kobe and Gianna's exceptional basketball legacy and the uplifting relationship Kobe shared with all four of his daughters. It was, as I said, the official installation of it being placed there yesterday marks special significance as it honors that being 8-2-24. It honors the numbers of Kobe, who wore during his career with the purple and gold with the Lakers, 8 and 24, and the number Gigi wore playing competitive youth basketball with 2. The statute, as it stands, will be open and available for public viewing starting today at 9 a.m. So 9 a.m. being, if we're talking about Pacific Standard Time, a little over an hour from now. So Spillman, what are your thoughts on this statue, being placed at Crypto.com Arena, and what it stands for?
As the cast knows, as our good listeners know, I am a huge Laker and Kobe Bryant fan. So for me, any dedications to him, especially by the Laker organization, are warranted. I think it's good that they put the statue up there because they have been kind of milking the even the Gigi side of the tragedy. So for them to put honorary a memorial up for them is why the Lakers are the organization that they are. That's pretty classy to me. I like the because I believe this statue is from the last game they played at, where he attended with Gigi. I think it's the game where LeBron did the Kobe like up and under dunk, and then they were like pointing at each other and having a good time, and then he passed like a couple of days later. I think maybe 3 days later. So I believe that's where this is from. So that's very touching. It makes me kind of sad. But just for them to be honoring their legacy like this, it's kind of ironic that 8-2-4 is the date that they that was so close technically to the tragedy, that they could do it, because they generally do August 24th is a Kobe Remembers Day online and everything. So to do 8-2-24 is big too. So it's just sad to see that they passed away.
For sure, for sure. Just as you said, I don't think much else needs to be made in terms of what you had shared thus far. Good on the Lakers organization to be able to commemorate, one of the legends of their franchise, and just the fact that it highlights, just as they were talking about, the in terms of the mission of the statue in and of itself, of being able to not only commemorate Kobe Bryant, his relationship with his daughters, with Gigi, and also to highlight the importance of women in sports, of girls in sports. So good on, like I said, good on the Lakers organization, just as you said, of separating themselves from a lot of other organizations that are out there in terms of the um the respect, but also the honor that they place a lot of their players that have dedicated so much to their franchise. That I feel like, and we've talked about on the show before, there are instances of franchises who will remain unnamed that um, their players have given a lot to their franchises, and
Don't have nothing to
recently,
show for it. Don't have
I'm just
nothing to
saying,
show for it.
recently, that we've had examples of that where we've had players who have given so much to a franchise, and how the franchise kind of treats them when they're on the tail end of their careers is kind of unfortunate. um, when a lot of what the franchise is enjoying in terms of their success can be attributed to the efforts of the player when they were in their prime years. So again, good on the Lakers. This is awesome. It's a beautiful statue. Um,
Yeah.
Hopefully, next time I have a chance to make it out to LA, I'll have a chance to check out the statue myself. Um, but as I said, I wanted to be able to include this story. It initially wasn't, on the agenda, but it was something relatively recent. But I still wanted to include it in here, seeing that it is related to a lot of what we talk about here on This Week in Pop Culture, especially since I know, Spillman is a huge Lakers fan. So
Huge Lakers fan.
I would be remiss not to include this among our agenda. But with that being said, I wanted to get into our last story, and as you guys well know, typically whenever we have our main event or our primary story that we save for the end, you normally find that as our cover photo for the episode. And so I wanted to talk about USA basketball. USA in terms of what they've been able to accomplish, and this is talking about on the women's end or on the men's end. It's nothing that has been unexpected. The expectation, we have high expectations when it comes to USA basketball, where the expectation is that there are no defeats and that we receive the gold by the end, and that's always the expectation. That's not always what the how things turn out, especially in the last couple of years. But so far, on both ends, whether we're talking about women's basketball or men's basketball, both have remained undefeated as it stands right now. We have men's basketball team. They will be playing today, actually right now, or in a little bit, in
In
11:15.
15 minutes, actually. So we got to
11:15.
wrap this
They will
up
be
quickly,
playing.
ladies and gentlemen, because we got to
Yeah,
see this game for
yeah,
sure.
and then the women's basketball team will be playing tomorrow. So Spillman, in terms of what we've seen with the men's side and the women's side, I feel like the women's side has been more indicative of what the expectation is in terms of USA's dominance in the sport of basketball versus what we've seen in men's basketball. But I do have thoughts as to why the games have been far more competitive on the men's side. So, I'll punt it over to you, and then I'll share my thoughts.
So I think that obviously the world has caught up. I think that, a big part of what this all is is that, the teams are much better. Like Team France has got 3 or 4 legit NBA players. Some of them get awards. Like they have the Rookie of the Year on their team. They've got the Defensive Player of the Year on their team. They obviously have Nicholas Batum, and there's raps that's like silly jokes about Nicholas Batum, but he's still a very serviceable player, and he plays better, I think, in international ball than he does at this point in NBA ball. With the differences in the speed of the game and how the ball moves. I think also some of the ways that you could construct a roster for the NBA for the USA team isn't what the skill is for American basketball players at this point. Like Joel Embiid is the big man, but there's not really a true center that is dominating the league like has been in years past for this team. Like even with the Dream Team, they had, two great big men, but Patrick Ewing and Patrick Ewing and David Robinson, who are great all-time centers, but they're not the best. But at the time, they're basically the best two centers in the world. So I think that that's done a lot of changing. But we did beat teams with players who are MVP candidates and arguably the best players in the world. So to have a great game against Serbia shows that we still got the goods. And to me, this really is an indictment of Michael Jordan because Michael Jordan wasn't the best player in the wouldn't have been the best player at the Olympics in 2000 if he'd have showed up in 2000 like LeBron is, because he'd have been 39 in 2000, or no, in 2004 even. Imagine Michael Jordan playing in 2004. Not even the Sydney Olympics, but think about it. They lost that Olympics. You think if you put Michael on that team with AI and young Braun and all them, they would have won a gold medal? I don't think so, because Michael was old by then. They didn't put the ball in Michael's hand and say, hey, Michael, go win this game for us. But they do that now. They say, LeBron, please, please, we're begging you, LeBron. Get us to the promised land. Steph Curry, go ahead, LeBron. You score this bucket. I know you can get the job done. They don't say that. They don't say that about Michael Jordan.
So I'll say this. When we're talking about men's basketball, I agree. I agree wholeheartedly that the world has caught up. If we're talking about any of the other teams, when we're talking about the Dream Team, it was pretty much unheard of on any of the other teams for us to have, NBA players on the other teams. And this year, this is
it's like all
let me
NBA
highlight
players.
this. But let me highlight this too. Your league MVP is not on the USA team. The league MVP of
The
the NBA
last
is not on the
three
USA team.
MVPs, I believe.
So that says something in terms of the level of talent that has caught up to
Or two of the last
the
three. Two of the last
USA
three.
team. And I mean, on average, you were talking about the examples just with France. It's not unheard of for some teams to have two, maybe three NBA players on their team. So if we're relating it to past years where we didn't have as many international players, there is kind of that intimidation factor because players are not used or accustomed to dealing with players that are that are in the NBA. But if you have players that day in and day out are used to playing that level of talent and they themselves have that level of talent, then that's going to demonstrate itself on the world stage when we're talking about a lot of these games. It's still crazy though, even despite that fact that the games have gotten so close as they are, where we're talking about maybe an average of like they're only looking back at some of the games, there are a couple of instances where they've been straight out blowouts, but for the most part, all of them have been within what 10 or
LeBron had to come in and
10 points
save
this
us.
year.
Yeah, LeBron had to be like, slow down.
So,
I got this. I put you on my back.
but let me ask you this, Philman.
Uh-huh.
Speaking of that and how close the games are, do you think, because there has been some talk in terms of the lack there, the rotation or the lack thereof in terms of who we have on the team, do you feel like that can be attributed to the what we've been seeing with how competitive the games are? Because I feel like even despite the fact that we have NBA players on other teams, we have enough talent on the team to be able to ensure that the games are not competitive.
Oh, for sure. I think so. But I think also, like I was saying, the roster construction, there's not a lot of rebounders on the team. And like I know that people like rebounding is boring. Oh, he's just out there being tall. But you cannot start an offensive possession until you get a rebound or they score. So if they keep getting chances at the bucket and you don't secure the rebound, you're not going to be able to score. So to
Your
me,
thought bubble agrees with you.
that's
I
right.
know so.
That's right. So to me, it's just I think it's roster construction. There's not a lot of big men. I think maybe if this was 20 years ago, Carl Anthony Towns would be playing for America. He wouldn't be playing for the DR like he is. Personally, I think that's how it would go. So I think it's stuff like that that happens where, but I don't think that a player like Carl Anthony Towns would make it better. I think he would make it worse. It's just, these NBA basketball is kind of played a different kind of way now. Things like rebounding and defense aren't as important. So it's just where it is.
Let me ask you this then. If we're talking about, since the quote unquote how the roster has been constructed, or the rotation of the players has been, a talking point, do you feel, because I thought about this too, in considering who the head coach is, and
I didn't want to say anything about the head coach because I feel like
I
I've been,
know,
been being
head
mean
coach
too
of my
much of the
team. I
segment.
get it. I get it. I
He
get
had a
it.
DMP for the
I
one
get
of
it.
the champions this year, but
I get it, but I can't help but think, and let me know what your thoughts are on this, that the roster, or the choice of rotation is a early ploy of getting trying to get into the heads of players for the upcoming year. Like, do you understand what I'm saying? Where, like,
I can see that.
you have Jason Tatum, right? You have players that won the championship last year. You're a little salty about it that they won the championship. So now that you have the opportunity to have them to be the head coach, you're gonna not play them as much. And by doing so, you're getting into the head psychologically of some of the players on your own roster. So that way it can, play a factor into the upcoming season that hasn't started yet.
Maybe I just think that honestly, this is an indictment of Steve Kerr. But I mean, it can't really be. It can't really be because like I think the game that Tatum didn't play in, they won by like 20 points, right?
They did. They did.
Yeah. So it's like it's like, hey kid, don't get hurt. We up by 20. You can play next game. It's not it's not a personal slight. But to have a DMP for someone of his talent level is kind of crazy,
It is.
especially if it's a CD. It's like, come on, coach, what are you doing? But I just feel like, you know, I've seen people make analysis that he's a jack of all trades, but he doesn't do anything exceptionally. Like he's not. They probably won't plug him in and he hit 5 threes and a half or something like KD did, but maybe he could. But I just think that the style of play and everything. It's just he just I don't
Well, maybe it's the
like
bias. I was gonna
I
say
feel
maybe
like
it's the
it's.
bias towards those players that have that pedigree of prior
I mean,
years.
I would play personally. I would play the three guys, the Steph, Braun, and KD more than I would play him. Steph, Braun, and KD are the big three of this era. I would pick Steph, Braun, and KD over Michael, Magic, and Bird, especially on those two Olympic teams, because Magic and Bird were old men who could not play basketball anymore. You see those balloons? Those were congratulations on the retirement balloons for those two old men. Sure, Michael was in his prime, but you know, those are just I
Mm,
just those
mm,
three guys.
and don't get me wrong, Steph's my guy, but I don't know if I can be blasphemous and say that he's better than those three. So
He's he's he
I don't know if I
he's
could be
he's at
blasphemous.
least on par with Larry Bird all time. I don't know if you could put him above Magic because Magic has more rings and stuff, and he's like got more Finals MVPs, and it's like a different kind of like because they are these are all players who are argument players. Like Michael's obviously the greatest shooting guard of all time. Magic is obviously the greatest point guard of all time. But Steph is making it hard to make that
Agreed.
assumption. But
Agreed.
he
Agreed.
wasn't playing early '80s Magic. Like if we were talking early '80s Magic, maybe I wouldn't make this blasphemous decision. But we talk about 1992 Magic after he was sick and convalescent of all that. And we're talking about 1992 Larry Bird with the bad back. You seen the Dream Team, Doc? He was laying on his back half the time because he was hurt. So to me, but obviously KD's been hurt a lot too. But I just feel
Yeah.
like
Yeah, and which is why it plays into the argument of Jason Tatum because if you're as a coach, while you may have players that have experience, you know get save those players with experience when you get further and further into the running for the overall title, like utilize the depth that you have because you don't want to try to burn them out early. Use
I'm
use
going
the
like
talent that
Tibbs,
you
baby.
have.
No, we using these hoes,
No, I'm
the Hall
saying
of
Jason Tatum is
Famers.
not a scrub, man. I mean,
He's not a
he,
scrub.
he was in the running for
But he still
MVP.
has two names. If you say Steph, KD, or LeBron, we only talk about you. There's no confusion on that. Jason Tatum, that could be anybody.
Mm. Like I said, I still feel like he provides enough of a matchup problem in terms of his size and then what he brings to the table in terms of his skill set that even if I understand later down the line as things get a little tighter that you have a definitive or a group of guys that you're comfortable with using, but you don't want to burn out some of your vets that have been there and done that early. You want to be able to utilize them down the line versus earlier. So why not maximize on the level of talent and the depth that you have on your team by using Tatum in a lot of these games and giving him more minutes than some of your vets. Because even then, it's a win-win anyway. Because if you're trying to ensure that you have success down the line, you want to make sure for those players that are don't have as much experience with the Olympics that they are getting those reps in and getting that time in. So um,
The
good luck
reps ain't
to
gonna make Jason Tatum turn into either three of them dudes. Like I like Jason. I like the Gaga songs, but what he know about being a Hall of Famer?
but
What he
look
know?
how
I
old he is.
just
He's still in his 20s, bro. Like he's still
that's
in his
fine.
20s.
That's fine. That's fine. He should be the best player on this team, but he's not. And no,
Mm.
and when they made that roster, you wasn't like, "Ooh, Jason Tatum's the best player on this team." Maybe that never even crossed your mind. You was like maybe toss it between Braun and Steph. Braun and Steph. That's what you was thinking. Maybe a dark horse, Anthony Edwards, from him turning out good this year. And did you see the ping pong thing when he was like talking to the ping pong ladies? That Anthony
Yeah.
Edwards is a charmer. I like him. He's just like, you ain't about to beat me no 10 donut. It's no way. I love that. I love that competitive spirit. I wish we had someone young and like that, like on the Lakers, but we don't have that. So,
Yeah.
I just think, it's a roster construction. I think that they picked Tatum at the beginning of the year, and then Jaylen Brown has looked like the better of the two this year. He's won all the awards this year. So I don't know. Obviously Tatum is a little bit taller. He could do a little bit more. He's got a left hand. So we'll see. But
For
that's all
real,
I got.
for sure, for sure. All right, so that is going to wrap up this episode of This Week in Pop Culture. As always, I want to thank my co-host here, Mr. Spillman Trueheart. Before we wrap up here, I'm going to punt it over to you. Can you tell folks where they can find you?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, remember you can find me at Truly Spill on Instagram. And remember to go see Deadpool. It's a good movie. I am a Cajun. Yeah, Gambit. Very cool.
All right. So again, I'm your host, Brandon Choi, also co-creator of Movers and Shakers Unlimited. You can find me at Brandon Choi ENT on X here, and also Brandon Choi _ENT on Instagram on IG. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be safe out there, and see y'all soon, guys.